The most dangerous thing you can do in this life is to wake up completely, because once you do, you will discover that almost everyone around you is still fast asleep, and the loneliness of that realization will either destroy you or transform you into something magnificent. This is not about becoming antisocial or rejecting humanity, but about recognizing that your soul has been called to a journey that few are willing to take. Think about the last time you sat in a room full of people, surrounded by conversations about weather, weekend plans, or the latest drama, and felt that strange hollowness in your chest, that sense that everyone was speaking a language you no longer understood. That moment of disconnection, that feeling of being an outsider in your own life, is not a sign of depression or social inadequacy. It is the call to adventure that Joseph Campbell wrote about in every mythic tale throughout human history. You see, there comes a moment in every hero's journey when the ordinary world reveals itself to be nothing more than an elaborate theater, filled with actors who have forgotten they are playing roles. The conversations become scripts, the relationships become transactions, and the very fabric of what we call normal life begins to feel like a costume that no longer fits. This is what Campbell called the first stage of separation, where the hero begins to see through the veil of consensus reality and realizes that the life they have been living is not their own, but a collection of borrowed dreams, inherited expectations, and cultural programming that runs so deep it feels like personal truth. Most people, when they reach this threshold, turn back. They stuff down the uncomfortable questions, numb themselves with familiar distractions, and convince themselves that the growing sense of emptiness is just a phase, a temporary malaise that will pass if they just try harder to fit in. But the true hero, the one whose soul has been touched by something greater than the machinery of ordinary existence, cannot turn back. They have tasted something beyond the mechanical repetition of days, something beyond the endless cycle of earning, spending, consuming, and dying, and that taste becomes both a blessing and a curse. This is where the profound loneliness begins. Not the loneliness of being unloved, but the loneliness of being awake in a world of sleepwalkers. It is the loneliness of seeing the puppet strings while others marvel at the dance, the loneliness of hearing the silence between words while others lose themselves in noise. And yet, this sacred solitude is not a punishment, but an initiation, not a sign that you are broken, but evidence that you are becoming whole. For in every great mythic tradition, the hero must first separate from the tribe before they can discover who they truly are beneath the masks they have worn for so long. The call to adventure rarely comes as a thunderbolt from heaven or a burning bush in the desert. More often it arrives as a whisper in the middle of the night, a growing dissatisfaction with the roles you have been playing, a sense that the person you see in the mirror is somehow both you and not you at the same time. You begin to notice how much of your life is spent performing, how many of your words are not your own, but echoes of what you think others want to hear. How many of your choices are made not from authentic desire, but from the invisible pressure to conform, to succeed, to be normal in a world that has forgotten what normal even means. This is the crossing of the first threshold that Campbell spoke of, the moment when you can no longer pretend that the mechanical existence you have been living is sufficient for your soul. You begin to withdraw, not out of hatred for others, but out of love for the truth that is trying to emerge within you. The parties lose their appeal, the small talk becomes unbearable, and the constant noise of a culture obsessed with external validation starts to feel like static, drowning out a song you desperately need to hear. This withdrawal is not depression, it is incubation. It is the necessary cocoon stage that every butterfly must endure before it discovers it has wings. In this sacred solitude, you begin to meet the mentors that Campbell knew were essential to every hero's journey. Sometimes these mentors appear as books that find their way into your hands at exactly the right moment, sometimes as strangers who speak words that crack open something inside you, and sometimes as the quiet voice of your own deeper wisdom that has been waiting patiently for the noise to die down so it can finally be heard. The silence that once frightened you begins to feel like home, and in that silence, you start to remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. But let me tell you something, fellow traveler on this ancient path of awakening, you are not alone in this journey, even when it feels like you are the only person in the world who sees what you see. There are others walking this same mythic road, others who have felt that same call to adventure, that same need to step away from the mechanical dance of unconscious living. If this resonates with something deep in your bones, if you feel that recognition of your own story in these words, then consider yourself part of a sacred community of awakening souls. Subscribe not just to hear more words, but to join a fellowship of those who choose depth over surface, truth over comfort, and authentic solitude over empty connection. Share your own moments of awakening in the comments below, because your story might be the catalyst that helps another soul recognize their own call to adventure. The road of trials that follows this initial awakening is perhaps the most challenging part of the entire hero's journey, because it is here that you must face what Campbell called the guardian at the threshold of every transformation. These guardians are not always external enemies or obvious obstacles. More often, they are the parts of yourself that have been programmed to keep you safe by keeping you small, the internal voices that whisper you are being selfish, antisocial, or unrealistic, for wanting something more than the approved script of modern life. You will face the temptation to return to the comfortable numbness of unconscious living, to rejoin the dance of distraction, and pretend that the glimpse of deeper reality was just a phase. During this time, you may find that relationships that once felt essential begin to feel hollow or even toxic, not because the people in your life have changed, but because you have. And the person you are becoming can no longer pretend to be satisfied with connections based on shared unconsciousness rather than mutual recognition of each other's deepest truth. This is perhaps the most painful part of the journey, watching friendships fade not through conflict, but through the simple fact that you no longer speak the same language, that your concerns and their concerns seem to exist in different universes entirely. But here, in this apparent isolation, something miraculous begins to happen. You start to attract a different quality of connection, relationships based not on shared neuroses or mutual unconsciousness, but on the recognition that Campbell called the meeting of souls who have undergone similar transformations. These connections, when they come, feel like water in a desert, like finally finding your tribe after wandering in exile for so long. They are rare, these authentic meetings between awakened souls, but they carry a depth and meaning that makes all the superficial connections of your former life seem like shadows on the wall of Plato's cave. You learn to distinguish between loneliness and solitude, between isolation and sacred withdrawal. Loneliness is the ache of disconnection from others. Solitude is the joy of connection with yourself and the greater mystery of existence. In this solitude, you begin to hear what the mystics and philosophers have been pointing toward for millennia, the voice of your own deepest wisdom, the song of your authentic self that has been singing beneath the noise of conditioning your entire life. My dear friend on this pathless path, if you have made it this far in our exploration, then you know in your heart that this is not just another video you stumbled upon, but a mirror reflecting your own journey back to yourself. You are not crazy for feeling different, for needing more, for seeing through the illusions that others still take as reality. You are awake and awakening, while beautiful beyond words, is also the loneliest and most courageous thing a human being can do. If these words feel like a homecoming to your soul, then welcome to this sacred community of conscious rebels, this tribe of those who choose truth over comfort. Subscribe and ring that bell not because I need your numbers, but because you deserve to remember, again and again, that you are not alone in this magnificent, terrifying, beautiful journey of becoming who you really are. The return phase of the hero's journey, as Campbell understood it, is not about going back to where you started, but about bringing the gifts of your transformation into a world that desperately needs what you have discovered. You learn to live as what the mystics call in the world but not of it, participating in the great dance of human existence while never forgetting the deeper truth that lives beneath the surface of all appearances. You can engage in small talk without losing your soul. You can play the necessary social roles without forgetting they are roles, and you can love others, not despite their unconsciousness, but because you remember what it felt like to be asleep and have compassion for the dream they are still dreaming. This is the ultimate freedom that Campbell wrote about in all his studies of myth and transformation, the freedom to be fully human without being imprisoned by humanity's collective unconsciousness. You become a bridge between worlds, someone who can speak the language of both sleep and awakening, someone who can offer others a glimpse of what lies beyond the mechanical existence they have accepted as the only possibility. Your very presence becomes a reminder that there is another way to be human, another way to move through this world with consciousness rather than reaction, with presence rather than performance. The sacred solitude that began as an exile becomes a sanctuary, a place of renewal and clarity that you can access even in the midst of the busiest day or the most challenging circumstances. You no longer need to withdraw physically from the world to find your center, because you have learned to carry that center within you wherever you go. The loneliness transforms into a profound sense of connection, not just with the few souls who share your level of awareness, but with the mystery of existence itself, with the great unfolding story of consciousness discovering itself through billions of individual awakenings just like yours. And so, dear awakening soul, you discover that the hero's journey never really ends. It simply spirals deeper and wider, encompassing more of life's complexity while never losing touch with the simple truth at its heart. You are not here to fix the world or save anyone who is not ready to be saved. You are here to live your truth so completely, so authentically, that your very existence becomes an invitation for others to remember their own forgotten magnificence. In your sacred solitude, you have found not isolation but integration, not escape from humanity but the key to what it truly means to be human.